As the Story Grows. I'm Amanda Patton, filling in for my husband, Brian Patton, who is currently without a voice. Today, we welcome the Halo Effect bassist, Peter Iwer, to the podcast. The Halo Effect released their sophomore record, March of the Unheard, last Friday on Nuclear Blast Records. Peter talks about Odd Island brewing and getting involved in craft beer, his lifelong love of music, the origins of the Halo Effect, the lyrical themes on March of the Unheard, coordinating schedules to book tours, and more. Thanks for listening to this episode of As the Story Grows. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. You can find links in the show notes for the podcast mailing list, our community on Discord, or you can support the show financially and get early access to every episode on Patreon. And make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to the podcast on your podcast platform of choice. Enjoy today's conversation with Peter Iwer.
How's it going?
It's good. Going well, thanks. I'm having a day full of interviews.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's always nice to, you get a little fed up after a while talking too much about yourself. So I'm trying to keep it interesting.
Yeah. It is the tough part knowing that like bands are like, you're like the third or fourth interview in their day and you're like, how do I not ask the same stupid question that they've heard?
But the thing is, there are no stupid questions. There are just stupid answers. So just go ahead, man. I'll try not to answer too stupidly.
Oh, it's all good. Well, let's maybe start with something different for you. You are partners with Odd Island Brewing, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm one of the owners.
Awesome. How'd you get started in brewing and craft beer?
Well, actually, it was Daniel, our drummer and colleague. He was super interested in craft beer, more so than I was in the beginning. Our first interaction with craft beer was on tour with In Flames, and especially in America. I remember a lot of people. A lot of people used to give us craft beers. Back then we were just in our early 20s, and back then people wanted to. We just wanted to have beer and get wasted, and meet girls. Kind of
right.
Have fun as you do. Then people wanted to give us this craft beers, and we was like, oh, what is this perfumey shit? Kind of, But then, long story short, this went on for a few years. We always put it aside. Where's the hoppy stuff? Where's the flowery stuff? But, as you grow older, you become more interested in flavors, and, I become more interested in food and drinks and, combining the two, and maybe not so much interested in drinking 20 Budweisers every day. I wanted to. So we all started trying these beers, and we found our own flavor that we liked. And Daniel's and our favorite was American Pale Ale. Okay. And Sierra Nevada was one of the beers that we got into really, really well from the beginning, because it's kind of a good way, kind of a light craft beer thing, I would say. So Daniel got really interested in this and started getting into IPAs and all that type of stuff. And I was a little behind him, but I was always interested in marketing and in advertisement and, how things, why is it that some products are more visible than others, so to speak, kind of that. And so when he got into it, as I have had a restaurant called 2112 in Gothenburg, and I just told him, was like, when you're comfortable, just sell me the beer and I'll try it on some customers. And we did, got some feedback, and then I asked him, like, would you like me to be part of Odd Island and help with the marketing and everything? And he's like, sure.
Nice.
So I did. I joined after a while. We started doing it, started selling it. It was just the two of us, and it was fantastic because it was like literally coming from In Flames, where we had staff taking care of our every need besides, using the toilet and playing our actual instruments. We had people working, doing everything. And from that, starting a brewery was kind of like going back to starting a band, where you have to carry your own equipment and tune your own guitars, change your own strings, all of that stuff, book your own shows. So I was literally sitting, calling people around, traveling around, just having people get into our beers because, and it was just the two of us, and he was brewing it, we were bottling it together, and then I was marketing and selling it, and it was such a good time. So we just ended up doing it, and we both left the band and started doing this full time.
Nice.
And then we started a new band. That's what we're here to talk about. But we still do Odd Island and still love it, But now there's a few more people in. After the pandemic, we had to go back a little bit to basics. So it's mainly the people that we have a couple of more people that co-own it with us. So it's us that work there, and we have a few people around us. But it's growing, constantly growing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We'll switch gears to music. You're a bass player. My experience is there's two types of bass players: people who like start on the bass and that's like their instrument and they're into it, and then like the third or fourth guitar player who then has to play bass. How did you get into playing bass?
Well, in the beginning of my musical career, when I got that question, I always lied and say that I was really interested in the. Well, I didn't lie because I was interested in the symbiosis between drum and bass and how we could improve it. But in all honesty, I was the third guitar player. I really was. And in my first band, we were three guitar players. There were two who could actually play really, really well, and then there was me. And I wrote some of the songs, and I always insisted that on the songs that I wrote, I play guitar. But after a while, I just, never mind, you guys are way better than I am. I'll just get into bass, and I'll actually start exploring this, finding the symbiosis between drum and bass and how I can, get it more interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm a little bit of both.
Yeah. What got you into music, and maybe more specifically, what got you into metal?
My whole family is a musical family. My grandfather he played the accordion and the piano and the guitar and all that stuff. So there was always instruments laying around their house, and also our house. We had guitars and like a Hammond organ and pianos and stuff like that. So it was just something that happened. We just me and my brother, we both picked it up and just started playing at an early age. And it was never a question of not playing. It was just, basically, what can I play and what do I want to play? And my brother, he played guitar, so which is why I also wanted to be a guitar player. So we had the instruments laying around and just picked up whatever was there. We had the drums as well, and funnily enough, we both went on to become musicians. And he was a guitar player. I became a bass player. Later, he actually switched to bass and started doing that instead. And I never became a musician. I was born a musician, so to speak. It was just a matter of if I was going to do it professionally or just for fun. And when I was about 14 or so, my high school teacher, or my teacher, told me, "You're never going to be a musician. There's no such thing as making a living as being a musician. It's almost impossible. Do something else." I was like, that was my driving force. Like, no, I really want to do that. I knew that my grandfather could, so why couldn't I? So I kind of, subconsciously, I wanted to prove him wrong. And I always had that type of mentality. When somebody says, you can't do this, then I will.
Yeah.
And that goes, in different directions as well. If don't push this button. Oh, sorry, I already have, It's like I do everything people tell me I can't.
Yeah. That ingrained punk rock mentality where you're like, fuck you, of course I can, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about the halo effect. You said when you left In Flames, you were doing Odd Island full time. Was there ever a point where you're like, I'm going to continue making music, or had you thought you were done?
No, I always kept on making music. I made the first album with a band called Syra, where Jesper was also involved, or still is involved. I wrote some songs for different artists here in Sweden. Just kept on writing, but I just, it was like never. I guess I'm one of those people, I can't decide what to do. One thing what to do, because I am so interested in so many things. So I always kept on writing music, and it was never metal, especially. I did some funk, I did some pop songs and stuff like that as well. I still write a lot of different songs, and actually, the song "Gateways" from the first record was meant to be a pop song originally, but then I played it for Niklas, and he's like, "Oh, we can use this for a really cool intro instead." I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So I like music, and I write music, and I guess metal is what stuck mostly, as far as a career went. Yeah. But I love all types of music.
What was the genesis for the Halo Effect forming, and how was at what point do you get involved?
Well, it's a funny story because I've heard it told differently than I experienced it. Because Niklas came to me. He actually called me up, as far as members, like, I want a meeting. I want to sit down and talk about music, and he came out to the brewery, to Odd Island. And Daniel was there as well, and I asked him, like, "Can we sit down, the three of us?" It's like, "Yeah, of course." It's like, "I have this idea. What about us starting a band again, doing it all over again?" It's like, and we talked about, that could be fun. It would be nice playing together again, And but then we have to make sure that we don't fall in the same type of loopholes as we did in the beginning of our careers. Yes, everybody falls into, do all the mistakes again. So we kind of, we wrote down some rules. If we do this, it needs to be equal. It needs to be fun. It needs to be on these terms. We need to have a good strategy. We need to have professional people around us that do what they do, because we can play music, but somebody else needs to, market it and sell it and stuff like that. So we started from that angle, and then Niklas showed us some ideas, and it sounded really good. And then he asked for what we had or what I had. And then on the way home, we talked about, actually, before we talked about who's going to play the second guitar, and we talked about Jesper. It would be fun because, I've known him since forever. Mm-hmm. I talked about Michael for vocals because he's a really good friend, and none of us have ever really played with him, but we all know him really well. So Niklas called Jesper, and I called Michael, and then we called each other, and it's like, "Oh, they're aboard." That's my version.
Nice.
I think Michael's version is that him and Niklas talked about it like 6 months prior to this, coming back from the Grammys or something, or even a year before. And then there's a different version as well. So, the key to it all is Niklas. He's like the guy in the middle. He reached out to everybody, and he's kind of like the main character that got us all together. Yeah. And he's also like the main songwriter, but he's the guy who he's very, very humble when it comes to songwriting. He always makes sure that everybody is involved. Yeah. And he's very open to new ideas, and he kind of asks everybody, "Do you have anything? And let's work on this. And do you have any ideas to that? Change whatever you want. Here's what I wrote. Change whatever you want, add whatever you want." So it's super fun to play together because you feel very, very involved in the songwriting process, and everybody is involved, even though more so than just putting their touch on it.
Yeah. Yeah, the band gets going around 2019, and then, COVID happens worldwide 2020. I know Sweden didn't have the same sort of lockdown rules as other places, but was it difficult to try to get this thing off the ground and going when, there's this global pandemic happening?
Absolutely. This is when we started talking about it, and when we went into the studio is when the pandemic started happening. So we had our first record ready about 2 years prior to the release, because there was no point in releasing it, So we went back into the studio. I think for the first record we wrote about 16 or 17 songs, but we landed on 10 for the album, and I've never done that before. Yeah, always wrote and recorded and released whatever you wrote, and then we kept on started writing for the next one. With Niklas, he writes music all the time, and he just sends you ideas and, like I said, asks for feedback and stuff like that. And it's wonderful to play with him. And of course, Jesper is there, and he writes also all the time. But I think that starting this up, it was good and bad. We wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise, because somebody would have been on tour, or away. All of a sudden, a lot of free time was added to our lives, and we were able to spend time together in the studio, write and record. And so I think it was a blessing and a curse, kind of, because when we were done, we had to wait another 2 years to be able to get it out there.
Yeah. This time around, you got a record coming out next month. Was it easier to kind of get together and put this together? Was it like a new experience in the writing and recording process, since it wasn't in a pandemic, more of a kind of normal?
Yeah, I mean, this time we all had our different schedules to think about. Michael is on tour a lot with Dark Tranquillity, and we had to look into time periods when he wasn't on the road, where he could go in and write and record his stuff. So it was a little different. Before we had all the time in the world, and now we had to schedule everything in.
Yeah.
Also with the work that I do with the restaurants and with Odd Island, and the work that Daniel does with Odd Island and his other job, and Niklas, everybody's involved in so many different stuff. So this time we actually had to go in and schedule. Okay, I can record this week. Let's sit down and write that week. And we listened to a lot of ideas on tour when we were out, trying to add some stuff and figure things out. So I wouldn't say it was more difficult, but it was definitely different, because our time wasn't. We didn't have as much time this time to just jam, kind of.
Album's called March of the Unheard. Where did the title and concept come from?
Well, it's Michael's idea, and I think March of the Unheard is it's for the unheard, for the people without the voiceless, the people that don't have a way to speak out, whether it's if you're somebody sitting on the sideline watching something happen that you can't, or it could be somebody who's involved in a country that's in a war, and you're just kind of a brick. You don't have anything real, no power to say something. You could be bullied in school.
Mm-hmm.
As whoever you are, you deserve a voice. And I mean, this is the short answer. You could go way more complex into it, but I think it's March of the Unheard. We want to salute the people that can't, for whatever reason, get their voice out, and kind of shine a light on that everybody deserves a voice and everybody's equal.
Yeah. There's a very similar art style on this album cover as there was with Days of the Lost. Did you guys go back to the same artist?
Adrian Baxter, yeah, absolutely. He did this. He does a lot of talks with Michael on both albums, talking about his lyrics and his vision, and kind of tries to. He has his style. Mm-hmm. And if you go to his pages, you will find a lot of other artworks that's similar. But we did it our way and our colors, kind of, with that's been significant for us, with the green somewhere in there. And I think it does a really. It's like he has a very, very unique style. I've never seen another artist who kind of draws the way that he does. Which kind of reminds me to looking at like an Iron Maiden album, mm-hmm. when Derek Riggs did all the covers.
Yeah.
And you could always see that whenever he did something else, I think he did something for Halloween and Stratovarius and stuff like that. You could always see that this is Derek Riggs. Yeah. And I think the same for Adrian Baxter. He's a very significant style, and I think it's awesome. And now it's our style as well,
Yeah.
So it's and this is the way to release music now. I think you have. You can never download a vinyl. Vinyl is a piece of art that you can actually hang by the wall or on your wall, and you can look in on it and see all these specific small little details that are maybe new to you for each time you look at it. And I think that's magic. That's you connect the music to to something visual that you can kind of get a full-on experience. And I think it's very important.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times these days you just listen to song by song.
Mhm.
And that's something when it comes to metal. We're very devoted to our albums.
Yeah. Yeah, we sure are. Album's out January 10th. It seems like these days bands or labels are more willing to release albums late in the year or earlier in the year. Was there a conversation about, early January release?
There was lots of conversations. I mean, this album's been done for about a year.
Okay.
We wanted to release it earlier, but for different reasons we couldn't. Also, part of it, I guess, was that Michael's out with Dark Tranquillity and he needs to focus on that. That's his main priority. And the record label wanted a specific time to do it where it they could give it full on attention and it wouldn't collide with something else, I imagine. We talked about releasing it actually late this year, but for some reason they wanted it in January. It fitted better. Okay. This is stuff I don't really get involved in so much. I trust we have a record company that I've personally worked with almost my entire career, Nuclear Blast, And Jens, who's our guy, used to be on Century Media as well, and I've known him from there because we did one album with them. Michael's known him forever as well. So we trust his decisions and his way of thinking. That's what they do well, and I have no reason to doubt it.
Yeah. Record's out January 10th. You guys are touring Europe January, February, and then you got festivals late in the summer. Because everybody's older, has other jobs, Michael got Dark Tranquillity, does it just make sense for you guys to kind of focus on touring Europe and ease of getting back home? Or is it just like, that's just what's booked right now?
That's what's booked right now. But with that said, I mean, I would love to come over to your side. It's been a little bit more difficult for a band of us, like us, to come over. We did a really, really small club tour, about 10, 12 shows. Was a year and a half ago or something like that. And it was great. It was meant to be small. It was meant to be intimate. But when we will come back, I want it to be more visible.
Yeah.
I would like to do like a good support slot or something like that, because even though we've been around forever as humans, as musicians, the Halo Effect is a new band and we need to work it. And we've worked Europe a bunch of times. We did tours with Machine Head, Amon Amarth, Meshuggah. Now it's time for us to do our own headline tour. Yeah. And for us to go over to America and do another tour, I think we need to do the same thing there. And so far, there hasn't been enough time.
Yeah.
But we will come, absolutely. We're waiting for the right opportunity. I love touring the North America.
Yeah, and visas are so fucking expensive right now that it really has to be worth it.
Yeah. I think ours are still valid, so we should be able to go anyways. But still, that's actually interesting. I'm going to look up to that. Somebody asked me about that the other day as well. Yeah. But I know that's something. It's not just expensive. It's difficult to get them because there are so many rules these days. And so we'll see what happens. Our plan is absolutely to come. We want to tour everywhere, but in spite of what we did before was tour lots and lots and lots and lots. And I think that this time around, we do want to make each tour count. Yeah. So if you see us coming to your town, you should probably go see us because you never know when we're coming back next time.